What's up, everybody? What's going on? Hey, it's been another week. Welcome to this week's edition of Black Box Beat. A lot going on the agenda today, but let's get right into it. I'm Kane.
I'm Maria.
And I'm Hells. All right, guys, let's jump into it. So we had the highly anticipated Apple release where they released multiple products, new iOS, and most importantly, which I think kind of slipped off a lot of people's radar, Maria, you no longer have to duck. Ducking is no longer required as a part of the system. How do you feel about this?
That was actually really cute that they included that in the presentation. I actually watched the live stream and I was like, oh my God, that happens all the time. So yeah, it was awesome. It was funny. It made me laugh.
Well, we now have new
Mhm.
freedoms and not have to go back and spell check ourselves as far as ducking and
Exactly.
what that other word is supposed to be. So I don't know, Kang. How about you? Do you feel good about that?
Yeah. Now that I can actually put the F in it, it's gonna stick. So that's what I'm talking about. And I also thought it would, an unrelated kind of, well, kind of related, but I thought it was kind of interesting that we were all sitting there trading, and I mean, maybe it's just because we were hovering around 4,300, at 42.99 level around that time. But as soon as that dude started talking about autocorrect, we started seeing red come into the market. So like market correction, auto correction, in the thing, it was just kind of funny timing to me.
It
Yeah,
was
no, it was
funny.
definitely an autocorrect in that moment. Rough
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, look, it's like the Apple really rolled out some neat things, and I know a lot of people are biting on the price tag. It was kind of interesting if you go back and look at that first Apple One computer that rolled out when it did like way back when. It rolled out at like $3,500, and this was way back when, adjusted for inflation, about the same amount. So I think just like everything else, it'll be adopted. The price will down. It's like I don't think it's as big of an impact as what people want to say. Apple continues to strengthen their ecosystem, and all you can really do at the end of the day is kind of tip your hat and say, "Hey, man, they are the best company on the planet for a reason."
I mean, I don't really have a use for a headset, but that thing looked pretty cool. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Well, if
and
you
I
think
mean,
about it, it's
for me
like,
personally, I liked it how you can look through it, like, actually, like, you're
Yeah.
not staring at, like, a TV screen, like, you can look through it and actually see whatever it is, in your environment. I'm with you though, Maria, like, I'm not really personally like a first adopter. I like to wait on a couple iterations to come out, like, they were saying that the battery life, I think, is a few hours, so it's not really that much, but I'm assuming that that'll get better with time. But I agree. I mean, a lot of this stuff is very innovative. Like, I was really impressed too with you being able to select things with your eyes,
Oh
and then
yeah,
you
that was
pinch to
cool.
choose it. I thought that was awesome. That's really cool. I look. I don't know who over at Meta. I think it. I wouldn't want to be them because it looks like it totally blew them out of the water.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the things is at least for what we do, and not to say that I would do it, or I'm not somebody who's going to buy it, but the ability to have multiple screens up. It's like if you think about it, just from the standpoint of that with the goggles, how a lot of us have like multiple monitors everywhere, 5, 6 monitors. You're probably running 3 grand just in monitors at the end of the day with what you have up. These goggles basically give you the same ability to be mobile at the same time. Go trade it in the park with 6, 7 screens in front of you. So look, there's a lot of stuff in there that I think, for longer term, it's going to be a great win for them. But just from the standpoint of watching them do what they're doing, I was impressed with it personally. But things that I'm not all that impressed with, and kind of looking at, you mentioned like a little correction that we had on the Apple Cell, and a lot of that came back through again today at Open when Canada had a surprise rate increase. I think that cut a lot of people off. Canada raising rates, and then we had Australia raising rates earlier in the week, setting the stage for what we have next week, being FOMC, CPI, PPI. We have all this data and all this big stuff next week. So we're setting the table now. How do you think that table looks, Kang, where we're sitting at this point?
Honestly, I think we're just kind of levitating. I mean, I wouldn't call what we've had over the last 2 days really any kind of trend reversal. I mean, we're only 30-ish points off of that 40, 300 level. We kind of ran fast and furious up there. We're getting a little bit of a kind of a breather, and honestly, I'm just really expecting the fireworks next week. And I don't necessarily know if that's up or down, but I do think that if you take a look at the economic calendar with CPI, PPI, retail sales, and the all important Fed meeting, which we get Powell Wednesday, I really think that that's going to be dynamite. Don't expect us to be in this area. And again, we could be smooth sailing over 4,300, or continuing this pattern. Who knows? But really looking forward to next week, because I think that's when we get the Momo.
Yeah. Mario, how are you liking this table and it's the way it's setting up?
I agree with what King says. I'm kind of just waiting for next week as well. Just kind of wanted to see what happens between now and then. So I agree with both of you guys, actually.
Yeah, it's really one of those moments in time that we have to be, I don't want to say overly cautious, but it's like when you do have these binary moments, like we've talked about throughout many of these shows, you have to kind of look at it. And a lot of ways, what we're seeing is some sectors catching up. Like we saw the big run in banks, we saw the run in the IWM, we see the Dow starting to catch up a little bit more with the results being what they were today. And it's like tech lagged when tech was a leader coming up. So I think, Ken, you last week, it's like, are certain sectors going to catch up? And I think you said something along those lines, and we're right in that. We're right now, it looks like maybe they're kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a big divergence between your cap weight. Like I was just taking a look, or what I've been tracking is the Nasdaq 100 versus everything else pretty much, and there's still a gulf there. But I do agree with you. Starting last Friday, there was a bounce in some of those smaller cap tickers, and so we've seen kind of some of that stuff starting to pick up. But like I said, for me personally, all bets are off until next week. I think there's so many things that are out there that I'm just kind of scalping intraday and not really wanting to commit to either direction, because I think next week will hopefully get us out of this funk. It's been feeling like some early summer days this week.
Mara, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think Kang said it perfectly. There's a lot coming up next week, and I agree also with what you said about being overly cautious, or not necessarily overly cautious, but being very cautious with what we're doing between now and then, and actually now through the summer, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's like even after this, that we have to start talking about August and Jackson Hole, where really policy gets set for an extended period of time
Yeah.
from the Fed. Usually, Jackson Hole is a really big deal. So it's like, from my standpoint and looking at it, just to close this out, it's like we're coming to an environment to where I think the market is betting right now, Fed funds future, that we're going to go ahead and not raise. We're going to pause or skip and let the data kind of marinate and come through. Data, for the most part, continues to come in strong, but there are pressures from the outside that are coming in. Student loan repayment, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that's coming on back on the books. We're also seeing a spike in commercial real estate defaults, is coming back in. So there's some pieces that the Fed has to consider overall, in addition to just whether or not CPI is coming down, as far as how they're going to go ahead and tackle moving forward. But yeah, great job, guys. Appreciate you walking through that with me.
Of course.
Cool.
All right. So now the question is, where is the money flowing? Maria, you're a flow head. I'm a flow head.
Right? You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's like today, coming into today, flow was directionally bullish. We saw some really shady lines coming through. Like, okay, that's a little bit odd. Why are you doing that? Just some things that were kind of like out of the ordinary that we haven't really seen over the last month or so. Even at the first pop of the day, they were coming in just nailing calls on anything and everything was getting call flow. Extraordinary bullish. When the Canadian rate decision came through and they went ahead and hiked, all bets were off. We spilled, in some of that great flow that we saw, catch up buyers trying to come into NVIDIA, buyers of things like PLTR, some of the smaller ones, they all kind of fizzled. They all fizzled away. It's like even the Tesla bangers that were coming in, the 230s, the 240s, the 250s, trying to get that gap fill on Tesla up at 250, even they started pulling back a little bit, and we still haven't seen catch up flow coming back into Apple. Now, with that being said, towards the end of the day today, we did start seeing decent amount of covering. Cat in particular had some really, really strong lines coming through. And there's been a lot of dark pool activity and a little bit of teaser flow coming back into travel and banks. So for me, and looking at where's the money flowing, I think we kind of have to eliminate a little bit of the tech mentality and look at some of these other sectors like travel, like banks, like some of these small caps that have, legitimate plays left in them, and kind of look there and wait for the bangers to come back into tech. Let it kind of cool a little bit and then reattack. That's what I'm saying.
And I agree with you. Flow is showing that. More importantly, and this was something that actually Mel had brought up today earlier in the room. She kept telling everyone IWM. She's been saying it since the last couple of days, actually, IWM, and she's right. We have seen rotation into some of those small cap names, and I think that we'll see more flow come into those names as well. If this truly is rotation, what I don't see just yet is that size, time, quantity flow that we like to see. So I really don't have a choice but to wait and see and wait until that flow comes in. But I agree with you. We've seen pockets here and there come through, and then you have a headline come out, and by the end of the day, you've got some big sellers, or you've got people closing out of positions by the end of the day. So it's a wait and see time for me.
Yeah, I certainly agree. All right, everybody, it's our favorite time. It is our favorite time, times 10. Why? Because we decide whether or not we want to shag, marry, or kill. So what's it going to be? What shall it be, Mr. Kane?
Well, my favorite of the three is shagging for obvious reasons. It's a good activity. But anyway, keeping it back here, look, I'm in cash in terms of these like longer term moves. Again, I was kind of in cash last week too. I mean, I'm still scalping intraday, but I don't see it. There's nothing wrong with just scalping intraday and hanging out. I mean, especially we're talking about all this stuff that's going to happen next week. We're at a major area of resistance or just under that. On the S&P, I think there's a lot of indecision out there. Hell, we're also checking fear and greed today. We're at 75. That's like knocking on the door of extreme greed. And you have the VIX at like some pretty historical lows down here in the 14s. So, it's kind of like, it kind of feels like the market's setting up for something. So I'm just, overnight, I'm just cash overnight, getting the money up, during the day and just rinse and repeat.
Yeah, it's like I really can't beat up on that. It's like the idea of just being able to be nimble is good. So yeah,
So my pick was the same. And actually, there was one question here from our YouTube live, shorting the trend. Yes, that was me, just in case you're still on. But yes, I'm cash too. Shag for me on cash. Just like I said a few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago, I've seen plenty of flow. It's come through, most of which is still very short dated. It's not flow that I love or feel that I absolutely need to follow. And that is one of the requirements. That flow has to be so good that I don't have a choice but to follow it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to take a blind shot here or there, a one off. But for any kind of serious position, it has to be flow that I don't have a choice but to follow. So I might be being extra cautious and selective with the flow I'm taking, but I'm okay with that. So I'm cash for now. That's a shag.
yeah, I think we're all pretty much in the same position as far as with this table setting week that we have coming into next week. It's like there is some opportunity out there to kind of add and kind of move around. I'm still in SoFi. I'm still in Intel long. These positions are out to 2024 that I put out through this. So it's like it's really not something that I'm looking to close or take out because I still think there's more room to the upside overall. However, if policy changes, and that's what we're waiting for more than anything, is an idea of what the policy is going to be moving forward, then you have to go ahead and be nimble. But it's like extremely nimble and kind of look to the downside. So for me, I think we're all in the same boat. We're all kind of looking at the market the same way, which is kind of cool. It's kind of neat.
I
All
was
right.
going to say on a lighter note, somebody in the chat, shorting the trend, says that their phone is already not allowing them to put the D in ducking and it's replacing it with the F. So hey, maybe it's already out there.
See,
Hey,
and this is why Apple is the best company in the world because they deliver on what they say they're going to do. I mean, look at that. Already, you no longer have to duck. You can do what you want to do.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. Thanks for chiming in there. Yeah, and there's a lot of great questions and great comments in here. It's like again, it's like we saw some really exceptional flow come into Marvell earlier, and they booked that deal. What was it with Amazon or I think Amazon? They locked the deal in with, and they got a really nice pop off of that. It's like there's pockets in flow that we're able to find, via BBS that I think is so exceptional that if you're really paying attention to what you see, much like what Mel Stone does on a daily basis, you can come out as a winner just by doing what Kang and Mario are talking about as far as kind of scalping these moves and being nimble and just having enough capital on hand to be able to take advantage of what you're seeing. If you're overly leveraged in, you can't do that. So environments like this, times like this, cash is king. Can't knock it. All right. What do you say? We want to move on to the viewer question?
let's do
Woohoo!
it.
What
All
they
right.
saying?
All right. Who do we have for our viewer? This is Gina. Gina, about as cool as it gets. Gina knows her bourbon extraordinarily well, by the way. So anything that she has to ask, we have to take very seriously as her being a real bourbon drinker. All right. When it comes to trading options, in your opinion, what is the number one factor you look at to verify the probability of a trade working in your favor?
So I can tell you that for myself, it's not there is no number one factor because it's a combination. It will never be just one factor. For myself, it's going to be with flow. It'll be size, time, quantity. I like to wrap in the technicals a little bit, so I'm looking at overall chart, and I'm also looking at the macro environment. What's going on out there overall? What kind of news factors can we get hit with? Does this sector get hit? Would this sector get hit by by a potential headline? Those kind of things. So for myself, it's never going to be just one factor. I couldn't give you a number one.
I would carbon copy, pretty much there. For me, there's no one factor. It's going to ingredient, kind of like a sandwich. There's multiple ingredients. The same thing for me. Like I've got to look at, the trend or the pattern that's setting up. I'm heavy into the technicals. Also, the macro setup. Are there any headlines, any news that it's reacting to? But outside of that, really for me, it's going to about setup in the chart. And then, of course, once that area, either support or resistance, once that breaks down the list to look at the volume, how it looks on like the 5 and the 15 to see if it's got any more room that it could run, and things like that. So I couldn't necessarily give you, here's the one thing, because, for me, it's going to be a kind of a multitude. And the more of those things that are kind of setting up favorably for whatever setup that I'm looking to trade, then to me, the stronger that setup is going to be. And I'll adjust capital outlay accordingly. So of course, if they're breaking out of something, and then a whole lot of volume, then I might size down, and adjust that capital accordingly. But there's not just one thing that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Which I'm going to go ahead and give you like a particular scenario as far as what I like to look for when it comes to stocks that may be lagging or beaten into the ground, or be used and or otherwise. And what I'll look for in particular is like, okay, so where is this ticker on the chart? I think you use a ticker like Bud, for example, maybe something along those lines. That has been in the news, a lot of headlines. The reports of their sales being absolutely horrible. Bud being one of those tickers that is really, really beaten in the dirt individually outside of the sector. So what I would look for first and foremost, if I'm thinking about trying to get longer term, is one, where is it on the chart? Where is it sitting relative to its previous lows? Where are we? Then at that point, if I'm watching flow specifically, I want to see them closing out of puts. I want to see puts coming in on the bid because that's really the first mark that you're going to see is either put writing or profit taking on puts that are already in place. Then if you start getting price action, you start getting volume, then usually at that point you start getting call flow coming back in. But opening a starter position on a decent like grouping of bid side puts or put writing is not a bad idea if you're looking to try to pick a bottom. And I know it's difficult to pick a bottom, But if you pick a bottom properly, life is grand. So those are the things that I would look for in opening a starting position. If you have a beat down ticker, look for those bid side puts. Look for that activity coming in that says, hey, you know what? They're done beating into the ground. Maybe we get a relief rally. Hopefully that helps, Sheena. If nothing else, I am very appreciative of your bourbon selection. So thank you very much for the question. And if you would like to submit a question to us at BlackBoxBeat, you'll be able to find a way to do that. It's somewhere here on here. You can go ahead and send or email it in. But everybody, I think that's basically wrap it up. Do you have anything else you want to put out there, gang, Mario?
No, stay green, everybody.
No. All right,
Bye,
everyone.
y'all. Have a
Thank you
good
for
one.
joining us for another week. We will be back next week once again. BlackBoxBeat, it's here. We'll see you soon. Y'all have a good night.
Y'all.